Well, maybe it's just my era or something, but I don't know if it gets better than Coldplay and Fix You. And one of the things that song does, I really appreciate, is it brings out the emotion that we all deal with in a broken world where a lot of things happen that shouldn't happen, and it hurts. And also the emotion of wanting to come alongside somebody. As Evan said, he wrote it for his wife, actually Gwyneth Paltrow at the time when her dad died, to say, man, I wish I could do something, but his heart going out to her. It's an excuse for me to thank you for something as a church, because as a pastor, I'm a shepherd, right? I care about people, but I can't do that by myself, right? And the way that you care for people in this church, for each other, is astounding to me. And when I hear what happens, like in small groups and in ministry teams, when somebody is struggling or something happens and they have a big downturn of some kind, and how people in our church, in those groups, in those ministry teams, come around people in ways that are just way beyond what I could even ask for. It's just like, man, it's incredible. So thank you for loving each other, for caring each other. And for those of you who are new in our church and not yet, connected, maybe, you're here in Rose, which is awesome. But let me encourage you at some point to get into a circle of people as well, to get into a group, to join a ministry team, because life is a team sport, and we need each other. And so thank you for being there for each other, and thank you for being here right now. So we're in this series called Reddit Hall, and Reddit, probably most people know, but just in case you don't, this social media site where people post questions and then give answers and debate often about those answers. And it covers everything from what kind of hose is best to big questions about life. And today, or in this series, we're focused on big questions about Christianity. Some of the bigger Reddit kind of questions that people ask about Christianity. And like last week, Ryan did such an incredible job. Go back and watch it if you missed it, or watch it again if you made it, where he said, hey, why is Jesus, so great and all that, but Christians not so much? Like, if Jesus is so loving, why can Christians be so mean? And that's a question that's out there, big question. And go back and watch it. Next week, we're talking about one of the most asked questions on Reddit, one of the most Googled questions about Christianity, and that is, what do Christians have against LGBT people? Because from the outside looking on, it's like, well, what's the deal? So we're going to talk about that. And so be ready for next week. And this week, we're talking about actually the most Googled question about Christianity. And that is about pain and suffering in our world. Here's the way I'll word it, if God is real and is good, then why is there so much pain and suffering in the world? Right, that's the number one most Googled question about Christianity. Another statistical quirk in there is that people who are married are significantly more likely to ask the question about pain and suffering in the world than those who are single. I don't know what to do with that information, but if you're single, way to go, I guess. But that's interesting. But whether we're single or married, doesn't matter. At some point, we're going to ask that question. And sometimes it's philosophical or something as you look at what's happening in the world and all the terrible things and all that. But often it's also personal. God, why is this happening to me? Like, why would you allow this? If you're in control and good, like, why is this happening? And because it's not right, doesn't feel right, doesn't feel fair. I remember years ago, my youngest son, Caleb, our youngest son, was 2 years old. Must have been turning 3 at some point pretty soon, but he was still, when you sat at dinner, still had some kind of tray, there. And in the night before this happened, I came home from a meeting. Caleb was still up and came home that afternoon, and somebody in this meeting had a cake, and I brought it home, this chocolate cake. Most of it was left, and he saw it right before he went to bed, and he, of course, like lots of kids, love cake, and we wanted cake. We said, no, Caleb, not tonight. It's too late for cake, but tomorrow, So he goes to bed. I'm sure just dreaming about cake all night, just floating cake, And that morning when he got up, that's all he was thinking about. I want cake. He said, no, Caleb, it's not for breakfast. We're not going to eat cake for breakfast. But tonight, if you're good all day, then you can have cake. firmly believe in bribery as a parent. I have no problem with that. And so if you're good all day, you can have cake, right? So we go through our day. Christy and I totally forget about the cake deal we made. We totally forget about the cake. Like, we're not thinking about cake all day. We forgot it was even in there, but not Caleb. So we're at dinner that night and eating and all that, and then we start to clear the table, and Caleb can tell, wait a minute, we're clearing the table, and I have not seen cake. And we could tell he was agitated, but honestly, we didn't really know what was going on. And he's getting more and more agitated, and finally he couldn't handle it anymore. And he takes his little fist and he pounds it on the tray, and he says, "What? I've been good all day, and you show me no cake?" And that line, "I've been good all day, and you show me no cake," is part of our family verbiage now. And we were like, "Oh, Caleb, we're so sorry. You're right. You've been so good and so patient tonight. It's amazing. Of course, you can have cake." And we all had cake, and that's great. But in life, right, sometimes it's like that. It's like to God. It's like, we've been good all day, and you show me no cake. Or, man, I'm doing the best I can, and this happens in my life? Really? Like, what did I do to deserve this? Like, what's going on? Why would a good God allow this to happen? And you can look at the world and ask that question for sure, right? You look at all the innocent people who are living terrible lives around the world. People who are in poverty, people who suffer from disease, people who suffer from injustice. But then in your life and mine, we've all had times in life where we're confronted with that question, God, why? Why would this be happening to me? I mean, even just in my life, just some of the bigger things, like my wife, Christy. Her mom died when Christy was 14 years old, and Christy's mom, this wonderful, godly woman who was a blessing to everybody that she knew, and she died, she shouldn't have died from a human person. Like, why did that happen? Why did that have to happen? Or my dad, I remember when he had symptoms that were off a little bit, and neurological, and all we were praying is, God, anything but ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, where your muscles and brain stop interacting with each other and you atrophy to death. And we're like, God, anything but ALS, please not that. And of course, he had ALS and would go through that struggle and die. And like, God, why? Or my brother, who died at 60, who had a kind of cancer that is normally not life-threatening, and occasionally will go, it's a skin thing, but occasionally goes underneath. But he's one of just a handful of people where it just went to his brain, and he was gone. And why? I just talked to, last week, I met somebody who was, he and his wife trying to have kids and tried everything for years, and now in these rounds of adoption, trying to adopt, and they just found out for number 7 adoption attempt just fell through. As their hopes get up and up, thank you, Lord, and all that, and then bam, slammed again. Like, life here is hard. Like, what is going on and why? That's what we want to talk about today. Now, I wish I could just answer everybody's question, right? Because all of us have that. I mean, if I passed around a microphone in this, right now, or online, or at another campus, we would have thousands of those questions from our own lives. God, why? And it'd be really cool if I could just say, well, let me give you the total answer. Here it is. But I can't. It's above my pay grade. But we do know a lot. And what we know can help us when we go through times in life that are confounding and even debilitating, to give us strength and perspective and hope. And that's what I want to focus on, is what we do know, because we know a lot. Now, what we're going to do is tell kind of the meta story in which all our individual stories exist, to give context for them. So the meta story is the big story that we find ourselves in, that give perspective to all the stuff that happens in our life, good, bad, and ugly. And then we'll talk about, after the meta story, well, where is God when it hurts? And how can I look to him for help and hope when it's hurting? All right, so let's tell the meta story first. Here's the meta story. The first part of the meta story, the big story we all find ourselves in, is that God created the world perfect. And you and I were designed, created for perfection. I remember when one time my other son, Colin, I think he was in kindergarten or first grade or something, and after school, somebody had said something that hurt his feelings, and he was sad. And I remember saying, Colin, I'm so sorry. You know, we live in a broken world where people hurt people, and I'm so sorry that happened, and that happens. And he said, well, Dad, why did God make the world broken? And I was like, well, he didn't make the world broken, right? He made the world perfect. He did. No disease, no pain, no sin, no death, no disappointment. A perfect world. And you and I were designed for a perfect world. We're equipped for that. But that's the beginning of the story, right? Because something changed, and that is this. You think, well, yeah, we don't live in a perfect world. What happened? Well, you know what happened? We screwed it up. That's what happened. We happened. Human beings happened. When Adam and Eve chose sin, and you and I second that choice every day, that we sin, they rebelled against God. Along with that came